Hello and welcome to the Game Day podcast from talkSPORT with me, Sam Matterface, talkSPORT's football correspondent Alex Crook and the assistant editor of The Mirror, Darren Lewis, as we bring you all the fallout from the Nations League and some of the big domestic transfer news and a couple of rule changes as well. England lack bite at Wolves, Scotland lack fight in Ireland, and the sack is in sight for Northern Ireland boss Ian Barraclough after 14 Nations League games without a victory. Wow. Nunes is going to Liverpool. Spence looks like he's on his way to Tottenham Hotspur, and he might not be the only one. And Aston Villa operating under the radar. Just like us, we've got bundles of talent, and so has the Premier League. We'll review all the incomers over the course of the next hour or so on the Game Day podcast from talkSPORT.
A terrific piece by a colleague of mine, Dave Kidd in The Sun last week. He was saying that is Southgate too loyal to some of these players? I know we're talking about his man management and the backing from the players in the dressing room, but Dave in The Sun was saying last week that 7 of the 11 that played against Germany had played in the final of the Euros. 10 of the 11 had played in the final against Italy at the Euros, and 7 of the 11 had played against Croatia in the World Cup semi-final 4 years ago. Now, when you talk about the talent that has come through since then, surely we should be operating with a meritocracy. And you could say, well, he is doing that because he's being kind to the players that have done well in an England shirt for him. But does that send out the right message if you're trying to evolve the team when players are doing well for 10 months and he's turning around and saying, yeah, but he did well for me 6 months ago?
Well, I think I sent you a message, didn't I, ahead of the Germany game and told you what I thought the starting 11 for the World Cup would be. And I think the only players that weren't playing from that 11 that I sent you were the 2 fullbacks in that game against Germany, which I believe is the first choice 11 and has been the first choice 11 for quite some while. I did a preview video a couple of weeks ago for a betting company in which I said 8 of the 11 who started the European Championship final will start the first game of the World Cup when it comes around. And I think that's because ultimately, like we were saying before, that was only 18 months ago. These players have formed relationships. He trusts those players to perform. There haven't been too many get-togethers in between time, so you have to use the combinations that you've already get because it's very difficult to work on new ones. In terms of when you say what talent has emerged over the course of that period, just going back between 2021, the summer, and right now, who would you replace in that team? Okay, they'll probably replace, James might play at right back and Chilwell might play at left back. The 2 centre halves might be Stones and Maguire. Then in front of those, you're going to play Phillips and Rice. Then you'd play, Mount, Saka, and then Sterling with Kane up top. How would you change that, Darren? What positions would you switch out from that?
I think you have to find a role for Bellingham.
Yeah, go on, Crew. I've done a lot of talking. You go, Crew.
I think you have to find a role for Bellingham. I think Bellingham offers more dynamism than Phillips. I know actually Bellingham probably hasn't excelled in these run of games that we would have hoped for, but looking at his performance at Wembley against the Ivory Coast, box-to-box midfielder, I think he offers you more as an attacking threat. You've got 2 players there who are very comfortable in terms of attacking the opposition box, so one can sit, the other can go, and that naturally makes it a less defensive, a less cautious lineup. Apart from that, maybe you can make an argument for Saka. Did you play Foden? Did you play Grealish? But apart from that, I think you're probably on point. I think that will be the 11.
You see, I agree to a certain extent with the changing of the 2 fullbacks. I don't think Maguire, on the evidence of the last 10 months, justifies his place in the team.
So who'd you play there instead?
I would look at seeing if either Tomori could cope there.
You'd go into a World Cup with Tomori and Stones as your centre halves.
Well, yeah.
Is Southgate going to do that?
No.
Well, you're not asking me what Southgate's going to do. You're asking me what I would do. And the second thing is this. Maguire, for me, is vulnerable to pace. If you play against a team that has 1 quick centre half or 2, we are bang in trouble. So you can look at me as though I've got 2 heads if I mention that there is uncertainty, or there should be uncertainty around Maguire. but he's had a shocking Premier League season. He's done okay in some matches that are basically training exercises. And you think that justifies his inclusion at the highest level of competition in global football?
I think actually, probably for me, it would be more sensible to play Maguire and Tomori, because Stones, I think, is vulnerable to making a mistake and doesn't stay fit often enough. And actually, the blend of Maguire and Tomori probably works a little bit better. He reads the game really well, Harry Maguire. He brings the ball out of defence well. Tomori, brilliant in terms of speed and anticipation and great at tackling. So I think that blend might be something that we can work on in the future. Well, look, but it is the weakest part of the lineup, that central defensive area. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
I'll just be very brief then. With the fullbacks, yeah, I think that there is competition in both positions. I'm not as pessimistic about the left fullback position, because I think that we'll see a different Luke Shaw next season under Ten Hag, and a more organised, disciplined team where the onus will be on him to improve, or he'll just get someone else. I think that we have Chilwell, who is fit and will be better next season. I'd like to see maybe Tyrick Mitchell get an opportunity to see if he can cope or if he can make the step up. We have Trippier, who can play on that side as well. And if you think about our group games, none of them really, you would argue, would we be the worse off for any of those players playing in those positions. We have genuine quality in the left back position. Foden, I think, gets into my first 11. So does Saka. Kane obviously starts. Bellingham has to be in there. And we have to not be afraid to dislodge some of the senior players that have done well for us. We seem to think it's a heresy to do that, but the bigger nations, I look at Chemeni, who's come through for France. Nobody's talking about a French team without him playing in it. We are the only nation who are wedded to either a certain way of playing, a certain group of players. We are so intransigent. And that, if anything, is the reason why other nations are ahead of us, because they find different ways to play. They take risks. They do operate a meritocracy, and we don't.
Well, Gareth Southgate isn't a risk-taking manager. So I don't think he's going to stray too far from his loyal lieutenants. I think if we're sat here now, he probably knows. Listen, I said on the boot room on Sunday, he knows 21 of his 23. He probably knows all of his 23, to be honest. And I don't see too many curveballs from that. I think his comments on Sancho and Rashford, who I actually felt before he said that if they played well under Ten Hag, had a chance of getting back into his plans. Those comments have virtually closed the door on that. I think, as Sam says, there's a trust issue between Southgate and Rashford. Southgate has a set of players that he trusts. Harry Maguire, whether we like it or not, is one of those. I would be astounded if Harry Maguire doesn't start the first game at the World Cup, unless his form completely falls off a cliff at Manchester United. And I think he'll improve under Ten Hag as well, for the reasons you've just said about Luke Shaw. I think he's a guaranteed starter.
Do you know what's funny? It's not funny at all, actually, but I see, perhaps unfairly, some of the other ex-professionals speak about Harry Maguire, and not only Manchester United's decision to buy him, but also England's reliance on him. And that says to me that Harry Maguire has a point to prove to all of them. I don't want to join in with any of that negativity, because it's not Maguire's fault how much he costs. And, you know, you can see he's a good, honest professional. So I'm not here to bash Harry Maguire. All I'm saying is, if you play him, generally you have to play a 3, because very often he can be caught out for pace. That is fact. So that's, again, not criticizing him. That's just stating fact. And when you go into a World Cup, if you are playing against even lesser teams, if they have a quick forward who can get in behind you and take advantage of the fact that you don't smell danger quickly enough, you're in trouble. So it's hard to make that case. Even though you think he's going to start for Southgate, it's hard to make the case justifying it on recent form.
Yeah, maybe the case. But as I said beforehand, despite the fact that we can all look at the stats, we can all look at his performances and say, yeah, we agree with you, I still think, as Crook does, he will start him. Okay, let's move on from England, because we probably spent more time talking about it than they have playing over the course of the weekend. Let's move on to some of the transfer news. The big transfer news this weekend is that Darwin Núñez is going to Liverpool for a record deal in around £85 million when you add it all together, 64 up front to Benfica, with 8.5 million of team add-ons and 12 million quid of other add-ons, personal add-ons as well. Liverpool's Portuguese connection is quite strong now. I think Pep Lijnders sort of started it off with his relationship with Victor Matos at Porto, worked with Michael Edwards and Julian Award on Diogo Jota, Luis Diaz, the boy Carvalho down at Fulham, and now Núñez, who's come over from Portuguese football. Seems to be a little bit of a silk road for Liverpool, this, Crook.
Yeah, it does. And I tweeted on Sunday night, and it was partly a barb dig at my own club, but you have to be impressed with the speed at which Liverpool get deals done. We saw it in January with Luis Diaz. As soon as news of Tottenham's interest emerged, Liverpool pretty much closed the door on that, and all of a sudden there he was holding up a Liverpool shirt. It's been the same with Núñez. There was interest from Manchester United. I'm not convinced he was quite as important to Ten Hag's recruitment policy this summer as maybe has been made out in some quarters, but he was an admirer of Núñez, no question about that. Someone he would have liked to have brought to the football club. Liverpool have snuck in there. They've agreed a deal. They've agreed personal terms. It's all happened very quickly. And I think he'll be a brilliant addition. And the reason I think he'll be a brilliant addition is that I know he's been on the radar of several Premier League clubs for a long time now. Brighton tried to sign him 2 years ago when Benfica plucked him from the Spanish second division, I think it was, at the time. So clearly there are more clubs than Liverpool who feel his style is suited to the English game. And you look at the way that Diaz has adapted, probably a player who was less heralded than Núñez, and he has taken to the Premier League like a duck to water. You look at Liverpool's recruitment over the years under Michael Edwards, pretty much every deal they've done has worked out. It's been a seamless transition to Julian Ward, and he's got this deal done on his watch, so it's a good start to his reign. And you look at Man City buying Haaland. I said on talkSPORT, those two clubs are shopping in a different stratosphere. You know, they're going to Harrods. People like Manchester United are shopping at Sainsbury's because they just can't compete. As soon as Liverpool or Man City come in for a player, they're going to join one of those two football clubs.
It's true. We mentioned it the other week. We said that, no longer are Manchester United shopping at Waitrose, because they're not. They're in a situation where if you're a player of an elite value, you are going to go to Manchester City or Liverpool. If you don't manage to get a transfer to one of those two clubs, you might look abroad to Barcelona or Real Madrid. But you're Manchester United, even your Chelsea, and then you're going further down the pecking order. There may be a case that actually some players may turn up at Tottenham this year because they want to play for Antonio Conte. And that is certainly looking like being the case for Jed Spence, who's going to transfer from Middlesbrough. He was on loan at Nottingham Forest, but he's going to transfer from Middlesbrough to Tottenham, it looks like, and possibly Richarlison as well. Now, I think we spoke about this over the weekend, in which, Crook, you said the interest is there for Richarlison, but it's not as close as many people are making out. Do you think, though, Darren, that Tottenham have got the bones of a team that could be the closest challengers to Manchester City and Liverpool, and actually maybe edge out Chelsea in third place next season?
Well, I said that last season, how they laughed. But now I think a lot of people are coming around to that way of thinking, because I just so many times last season, guys, I gushed really about Antonio Conte and what he had done. And people were saying to me, yeah, but the gap between them and Liverpool and City, never going to be able to. You think about the gaps.
Darren, they still haven't bridged the gap. They were still quite some way on that. They did finish fourth.
No, that's not what I'm talking about, though. I'm talking about the fact that Liverpool came from 25 points off the pace to challenge for the title.
14.
Say again.
14.
Again.
They didn't come up 25 points off the pace. They came up 14, didn't they, at one stage?
No, not last season. In the season,
yeah, but they won. They didn't have Van Dijk. And you've told us that was the key cornerstone to everything.
You're going to hurt your back moving the goalposts all over the place. Every time you make a point to me, I'm addressing it for you. The fact is that it has been done where you can come off a sizable amount of points off the pace to win the league. And when he was at Chelsea, that's exactly what he did. When he was at Juventus, that's what he did. Conte, we're talking about as well. And you look at the players that he's bought. He wants to bring in Bastoni at centre half. He's already got Perisic in the door. He's going to get Richarlison who will crawl over broken glass from Everton to go and play Champions League football at Spurs. If that move breaks down, expect Richarlison to spit his dummy out because he's desperate to go. And I see Spurs as the only club, really, unless Chelsea pull some real rabbits out of their hat. I see Spurs as the only club this season to actually, let me not make myself a hostage to fortune, because you clip this up and put it out and suddenly I'll be there for the taking. So let me temper that. Chelsea have got work to do, but I do see Spurs being in that mix to challenge for the title next season based on the transfer business that they've done.
Okay. Big week for the IFAB. They're doing their annual meeting in Doha. I bet that's a hoot. The use of all referees in one place at the same time. Cracking. The use of 5 substitutes will be introduced into the laws of the game this week. I think I've seen the basic ratification of the laws of the game 22-23, and actually it's already in there. So I think it's going to be done. I don't like 5 substitutes. I think it basically changes the nature of the game. It disrupts the flow of the match. You're basically changing half the outfield players during the course of a 90-minute match. Is that really necessary? Really? Not entirely sure that it is. I think actually you might need to get a little bit smarter with selection. If you've got a massive squad, which you probably have if you're a Premier League football club now, use it a little bit wiser. You know, do you need to make 5 changes as a spectacle? I think it damages the product, and I think actually we'll look back on it and think what a mess that has turned out to be.